Pooja Agarwala is a maker and designer of objects, primarily in clay. She is the potter half of Minam, a craft-led mixed media design practice based in Bangalore, India. Pooja is a maker who designs with the potter's wheel. She is drawn to the fired nature of different clays and the way each one subtly shapes the way she makes. Her current line of work brings together terracotta and porcelain in a series of lamps, celebrating the innate qualities of two materials that are often and unnecessarily placed at two ends of the luxury spectrum. Perhaps it could trigger a conversation about hierarchy beyond material, particularly in her home country of India, where studio potters, designers, and traditional generational potters inhabit different worlds. Although as a maker, clay is her chosen medium, as a designer, she is curious about other materials and often works with artisans to create mixed media objects. In the process, she hopes to bridge the gap between contemporary makers and traditional artisans and the way their work is valued. Abiam Alvarez. Abiam Alvarez. How much fruit does one personally let go to waste before we realize its value? What did it take to bring it to the table? How many workers did it take to collect all the crops? In California, many of the crops are harvested by many Latino communities who work many hours a day to make ends meet and provide for their families. The toll on their bodies is evident as many hours are worked in intense weather and physical conditions. They are worn out as they bend over the crops, and hands blister and toughen as they grip the tools and work the soil. As we pick the fruit from the grocery aisle, do we appreciate where it came from? Do we think about the laborer who tended the fields in order to bring in the harvest? We pick our groceries thoughtlessly, believing that all our pickings will be consumed right away. Much is bought, but as time passes, we forget about the expiration date or the freshness of the produce. By the time we try to use it, it has wilted, molded, bruised, darkened, softened, dried, and rotted. At times, it is not much. Other times, it is a little too much. It becomes discarded, just like the value of the laborer. Jose Arrevar Gomez is a Mexican ceramic artist and educator based in Metro Detroit. He was born and raised in Chihuahua, Mexico, and immigrated with his family to Las Cruces, New Mexico in 2007 so that he could pursue higher education at New Mexico State University. Arenivar Gomez earned his BFA in Drawing and Ceramics at New Mexico State University in 2015 and his MFA in Ceramics from Cranbrook Academy of Art in 2018. His work has been shown nationally in venues like the Museum of Contemporary Art in Detroit, David Salkin Creative, and Cranbrook Art Museum. He currently works as glaze technician at Pewabic Pottery and is an adjunct professor at Wayne State University. Arenivar Gomez's current body of work, Story Keepers, is a collection of coil-built, mythical, phallic, rabbit-like creatures that come from the depths of his subconscious. They invite him to reflect upon what he has experienced as a gay Mexican ceramic artist, explorations of sexuality, desire, suicide, alienation, depression, and compassion. He chooses to work with clay because of the direct connection with the actions of touching and transforming. His work is influenced by his curiosity and spiritual practices from some Hispanic cultures where they call upon the energy of animal totems for help, and by his fascination with fairy tales and ancient mythologies from different cultures. His rabbit creatures are totems conjured to help in his self-awareness journey, and the viewers, if allowed. They provide an invitation to stop, view, and gather information. Arenivar Gomez's work is a platform to explore and embrace both his sexuality and identity. It comes from the contradiction of the concealment of his queerness and his desire for visibility. Through his work, he introduces the conversations of identity and gender, inviting discourse on these subjects. He deals with sensitive subjects such as depression, suicide, anxiety, abuse, and shame because he is not, quote-unquote, normal. He believes it is his duty and obligation to continue the ongoing conversation of queerness in the ceramics field. Clay's physical qualities allow his hands to address difficult content. As in a myth, a fable, or a fairy tale, he uses his own hand-built phallic mythical creatures as a way to understand and explain the emotions and experiences of limitations, vulnerability, pride, and repressed desires he has encountered as a gay person. He uses the rabbit as a source of inspiration. The rabbit is traditionally imagined as fearful, timid, and as a sexual symbol, characteristics with which he identifies. Japheth Asiedu-Kwarteng is an MFA candidate at Illinois State University and former principal technician at Noost Ceramics, Ghana. As an artist, Asiyedu Kwartang produces works largely inspired by traditional Ghanaian symbolism that address social issues within the rich Ghanaian cultural and traditional values. Asiyedu Kwartang's work and research are focused on diaspora negotiation, how people, himself included, in a diaspora are able to negotiate their ways in their host country. It is his intent to set in motion an intellectual discourse through his work, to mobilize imagination, to conjugate his cultural memory with the realities of the present towards a new consciousness. Also, he finds it worthwhile to use Ghanaian ancestral legacy, kente cloth, as a source of artistic inspiration, to affirm diasporic identity that reflects the common historical experiences and shared cultural codes that provide us as one people with stable, unchanging, and continuous frames of reference and meaning. His work is a mixed media installation, with his material vocabulary significantly influenced by their symbolism in concept, context, and content. As these printed clothes of clay and canvases or paintings and other forms are personified to interact with spaces and other objects, expressions of diaspora experiences like love, fear, anxiety, trauma, isolation, adaptation, rejection, separation, and guilt are triggered. Resonating with nostalgia, he invites the viewer to return symbolically to the diasporic homeland. It is an acceptance of his otherness and cultural origin that is vital to the self-understanding of a diasporic people. Malene Barnett is an artist, entrepreneur, and authority on the cultural traditions and practices of art in the African diaspora and how it relates to her vision of the modern Black experience. From her sculptural ceramic tiles and vessels to mixed media paintings to hand-woven rugs, Barnett continues to evolve her craft and share her African heritage with a global audience. Using materials like the finest wools, pastels, and clay, she uncovers a deeper language of her legacy and an authentic understanding of her cultural identity. A passionate connector and expert ambassador, her mission is to use art as a tool to create community impact and open doors for the next generation of Black artists, and expand the conversation around marginalization in the arts and create greater opportunities for inclusion. As the founder of the Black Artists Plus Designers Guild, a global platform of independent Black makers, she is always seeking new ways to define the Black narrative and experience for a new generation while bringing awareness to inequality. Marlene Barnett has always been a bit of a shapeshifter, a fiber artist, a sculptor, an anthropological ambassador for underrepresented creators all at once. Through her art, she seeks to create a bridge to inspire community and open doors to more in-depth conversations around Black culture. With subjects as diverse as mud architecture in Mali, Kuba cloth from the Congo, and Nigerian terracotta pots, her work revisits familiar patterns in a new context of everyday use in Western society. Even though she uses clay as her prominent material, the process varies in the creation of each piece. It's not about a singular piece. It's about experiencing her universe as a whole. In a sense, it's entering the homes of her ancestors through the soul of a modern, well-traveled, deeply connected, Bronx-born mixed media visual artist of Pan-African and Caribbean heritage. Through these handmade objects, she finds her place in a long ancestral line of knowledgeable protagonists, Black women like herself, who, through their gestures, pinpricks, flourishes, and glazing, pursue dedication, mastery, impulse, and potency. It is ornate and muscular, generous and spare, historical but altogether contemporary. At its core, it's a sophisticated, unbroken mother tongue that examines the fragility of tradition while also seeking permanence and survival. Aaron Caldwell was born and raised in Fresno, California. He graduated from Southern Illinois University Carbondale with a BA in General Studio Art in 2019 and will complete his MS in Art Education from Illinois State University in December 2021. He was awarded the 2019 NCECA Multicultural Fellowship and the 2019-2020 Northern Clay Center Warren McKenzie Advancement Award. He has shown work at the Lucy Lacoste Gallery, the Clay Studio, Baltimore Clay Works, and several other places around the United States. He currently has work in the permanent collection of the San Angelo Museum of Fine Arts and SIUC's Student Center. He is also the lead director for Queeramics, which is a platform to connect, showcase, and support queer ceramic artists. Caldwell plans on helping create and sustain art-making and engaging programs in these communities, in hopes of encouraging them to pursue art as a field of interest or a personal hobby, because Black and Latinx communities deserve art, funding, and spaces too. Black and queer experiences as a collective and individually are his exploration grounds. He looks to key moments, ideas, folktales, sayings, and symbols of Black and queer culture historically and contemporarily. He builds upon this to create work that makes a nod to historical themes while still maintaining a sense of contemporary relevance. He primarily engages with the quietness, the parts of our culture without struggle and resistance, of Black and queer culture, keeping the direct and loud resistance linked to our existence and culture at bay, but he will also explore moments of resistance through his work because he feels it is important to explore and showcase our whole truths. We are not just resistance or this idea of quietness, we are both, and he actively works towards showcasing this truth through the work he creates. Juana Neko grew up in Bogota, Colombia, surrounded by handmade objects and with a love of working with her hands. Neko started making pots after moving to Athens, Georgia, and discovering the wonderful pots made in the area, which seemed to always be present whenever friends would gather to share food. After a decade and a half of making pots full-time, she is still inspired by how pottery brings warmth and connection to our daily lives. Neko's work is also influenced by the simple forms of terracotta and black clay tableware encountered in markets when living in Colombia and southern Mexico. Her forms are either thrown and altered or hand-built and, these days, fired in an electric kiln. The contrast of a dark clay body and white slips provides her with many opportunities for surface decoration, from simple geometric brushstrokes around a pot to more detailed sgraffito drawings of things encountered in her semi-urban landscape. Neko also uses different resist techniques to add or subtract botanical or geometric designs for low-contrast, monochromatic motifs under a white or copper-green glaze. All of these techniques complement and inform each other, creating a playfully varied body of work of pots made for candles, flowers, and food. Neko's work is sold in regional shows, open studios, and a few galleries around the Southeast. Her work is influenced by her garden, her interest in making and presenting food, her search for beauty, and by the relaxed warmth of folk pottery around the world, and the potential in every single pot to communicate through the subtle or more apparent marks of its making. The contrast of a dark clay body and white slip provides her with many opportunities for surface decoration, from painting with wax resist for low contrast designs under a white or green glaze, to sgraffito drawings of flowers, animals, faces, houses, bikes, or water towers. Her different decoration techniques are usually aligned with the function of the pots. Larger pieces tend to have more simple, low-contrast designs, which are then complemented by the food, flowers or candles that they are intended to present. Although cups, mugs, and pots that are meant to be held while in use are often decorated with drawings that invite the user to contemplate, they also offer some levity and companionship. Varuni Kanagasundaram's creative practice in clay, often incorporating performance and community participation, is an examination of the universal meaning of rituals. Meaning embedded in cultural practices, place, transience, and memory are explored from the position of the feminine and migrant from the Indian subcontinent. After completing her BA in Honors from the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology, she commenced establishing her practice exploring cultural hybridity. She's been a recipient of public art commissions and grants in Australia, awards in sculpture, fine art exhibitions, the NCECA Multicultural Fellowship in 2016, artist residencies including Anderson Ranch Art Center in 2016 and Santa Fe Art Institute in 2019. She has been selected in exhibitions associated with nationally recognized sculpture and fine art awards in Australia. Recent participation in exhibitions in the United States has included the 2020 NCECA Annual Exhibition and the 2019 Santa Fe Art Institute. Presentations at conferences and forums have enabled ideas underpinning her practice to be conveyed. She captures the markings and traces of ephemeral ritual performance as a memory. It is a translation of the ritual drawing of kolam, practiced by women in the Tamil ethnic community in South Asia to convey the loss and transience experienced by migrants upon culturally dislocating from their origins. As part of a performance, fragile turmeric yellow pieces were crushed as people walked across a threshold. She uses the shards collected from one experience to form another at a new threshold. She captures an everyday ritual of the Indian subcontinent displayed on clay scrolls in the ceramic installation. She translates the ritual of hot chai tea that is served in a small clay cup on the streets of India and in railway stations. For that moment, senses are stimulated, and there's a connection shared with strangers. The empty clay cups are returned to the earth by breaking them on the ground. Threads of a sari border, intact clay cups, and shards of the broken cups that connect people articulate the meaning in the everyday cultural rituals. Born in the Midwest, Chris Malone is a self-taught individual who expresses his creativity through fantasy, current ideas, and a creative way of looking at everyday life. Chris Malone wants his creativity to express his past, his future, and who he is now. He finds inspiration in those around himself, in frequent visits to underappreciated museums, and the general cacophony of life. Walter Moore is a potter. He is an African American. His mother introduced him to pottery. When she was taking a ceramics class for senior citizens, she invited him to come along one evening, and that was it. His romance for pottery had begun. He was as excited then as he is now. He is mostly self-taught from a plethora of classes, demonstrations, workshops, reading, looking through magazines, watching videos, taking plenty of notes, and learning from two of his best teachers, trial and error. He wants to be the best potter he can be. He wants to try and learn everything he can and let nothing get past him. He's dedicated to practicing and experimenting. To him, handwork is powerful, and pottery is indistinguishable from magic. Pottery allows him to create beauty with only his hands, clay, and water. When he is not in the studio making pottery, he is thinking about what he's going to make next, or he's learning new techniques and how he can use them. He's inspired by new ideas. Honestly, he gets inspiration from everything, absolutely everything. In the midst of his artistic sweat, he will get a quadruple dose of inspiration. Inspiration comes to him when he's throwing on the wheel, or rolling out a slab, or creating a template, or rolling a coil, or pinching a pot, or pouring or dipping on a glaze. His artistic curiosities are insatiable, and his imagination is restless and unlimited. Pottery is his passion. He relishes it. This is his story, and he's sticking with it. Lola Ogbara, cultural worker and artist, was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, and holds many skills under her belt, such as design, mixed media, sculpture, photography, and installation. In her practice, she explores the multifaceted implications and ramification of sexuality in regards to the Black experience. She works with clay as a material in order to emphasize a necessary fragility, which symbolizes an essential contradiction implicit in empowerment. Ogbara earned a BA in Arts Entertainment and Media Management from Columbia College, Chicago in 2013, and an MFA in Visual Arts from Washington University Sam Fox School of Art and Design. In 2017, Ogbara co-founded Artists in the Room, a collective of artisan scholars who hosts artists, emerging and well-known, in hopes of serving as a catalyst for artistic development and networking. Ogbara has also received numerous fellowships and awards, including an NCECA Multicultural Fellowship for 2021, the Arts Plus Public Life, and Center for the Study of Race, Politics, and Cultural Residency at the University of Chicago. Ogbara has exhibited in galleries across the country. She is currently based in Chicago, Illinois. As an artist whose identity is based primarily in the intersections of Blackness, queerness, and womanhood, Ogbara's practice becomes a way to process circumstances situated within these identities. Exploring the multifaceted implications of these interchanges, she uses the body form, as well as the absence of the body, to contemplate complexities of pleasure and desire, undeterred by anguish. Subverting myths of barbarity surrounding Black sexuality, she often uses and references her own body as a source of inspiration. This investigation has led to her interest in perpetuated Western legacies of violence inflicted onto the Black feminine body, thus creating a nexus conceptually in contemporary Black sexual politics. She works with an array of materials such as clay, rubber, cement, and metal, as these materials help play on the tensions of historic invisibilities and contemporary hypervisibilities in regards to state regulation of Black bodies. In addition to sculpture, photography, fabrication, and ready-made materials support the expression of her own reality. Her work exudes strength through vulnerability, in which she intends to challenge sexuality politics, social constructs, and discourse surrounding feminism. Patti Paiz-Jones's journey in ceramics started in high school. In truth, it was ceramics and an amazing art teacher that saved her and got her through to graduation that ultimately led to a career that she loved. Paiz-Jones earned a degree in art education with an emphasis in ceramics at the University of Northern Colorado, with outstanding ceramic instruction from Dr. Herb Shoemaker and Professor Dick Luster. Throughout 36 years of teaching, Paiz-Jones has had the good fortune to work with students grades 1 through 12. The last 10 years working solely with high school students in ceramics and sculpture, truly taking her career full circle. This experience helped solidify her desire to become a studio potter. As a retired art educator, Paiz-Jones is now focused on her own art making at DBS Silver Mountain Pottery, working with mid-range clay bodies and glazes. The possibilities of exploration found in ceramics is unlimited. For that reason, she continues to try new techniques, equally interested in functional and sculptural forms, and looks for ways to combine these two aspects of her work. Paiz-Jones found the inspiration for these forms from the area where she lives in the mountains of southern Colorado. As an artist, she strives to interpret the beauty of form, pattern, and the details she sees around herself. Intentionally, these forms are left white, and she finds their beauty enhanced by the way light falls on the forms and details. All of these forms are wheel-thrown, made with mid-range clay that have been bisque-fired to cone 05. The surface has been slip-trailed to create pattern texture. Hand-built ceramic blossoms have been sculpted using various techniques. Vanna Ramirez, a first-generation American of Salvadoran Taiwanese descent, is an artist with a passion for clay. She earned a BS in studio art from Skidmore College and has attended NCECA's 53rd Annual Clay Conference as a Multicultural Fellow, completed a residency at Red Lodge Clay Center, and completed workshops at Penland School of Craft and the Haystack Mountain School of Crafts. When not working with clay, she enjoys exploring other visual mediums, taking endless strolls and bike rides, playing cello, writing poetry, spending time with her pup, and watching the sunset. She recently began her new journey as a self-employed artist in Baltimore, Maryland. Ramirez chooses the path of an artist who risks discovering something new. She has no map, no tool for direction, except for her first-hand experiences, intuition, and those around her who keep her moving forward. She's on a journey to understand what her curiosities mean and how they inspire her intentions and creations with clay. She is searching for her voice. In her exploration, she enjoys constructing an assortment of forms, from functional to sculptural, as well as installation work. Her interests lead her to investigate varying textures, landscapes, and intimate relationships, among other subjects. She often likes to think of her work as pieces of poetry, moments to be shared in the hands of others. Angelique Scott is a dedicated artist and educator who earned her BFA from Virginia Commonwealth University in both art education and craft and material studies. She has participated in several residencies, including Vermont Studio Center, the Hambidge Center, and Skopelos Foundation for the Arts in Greece. As an artist, educator, and activist, Angelique Scott creates work about Blackness as a social and cultural identity. These functional and sculptural ceramic objects are influenced by how she navigates through society in regards to identity, family, and community. Her current body of work is reflective of her experiences from the past 2 years, highlighting domesticity. She creates specific forms that consist of found objects relative to Black household items. Weave, cowrie shells, bamboo earrings that mirror her cultural experience and invite the audience to engage in a vital dialogue about contemporary issues regarding race and culture. More recently, she created 2020 BC, Before Coronavirus, focusing on cycles of growth and transformation. One side expresses bliss, peace, and renewal, while the other expresses overwhelming feelings of anxiety, uncertainty, confusion, and anger. In her studio practice, she explores form, color, material, and social dichotomies. She's interested in analyzing both figurative and physical structures and creating a visual interpretation that encourages the audience to get curious or uncomfortable in order to change, improve, or understand. Antra Sinha earned her BFA and MFA at the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda in India. She apprenticed with Ray Meeker at Golden Bridge Pottery from 2002 through 2012. An award from the Japan Foundation took Sinha to Shigaraki Ceramic Cultural Park for 6 months, where a 3-foot-sized tetrarch was completed, leading to a commission of a 5-foot tetrarch. While in Australia, Sinha worked at the Tin Shed Pottery in Launceston and assisted Neil Hoffman at Woodfire Tasmania in 2011, where she also presented about Anagama firings at Golden Bridge Pottery, Anagama in South India, and participated in the exhibition Continental Drift. In 2014, Sinha assisted Chester Neely at Marcus Bohm's studio, Muritz Ceramic in Germany, and presented tetrarch making a 5-foot sculpture in India at the Second European Wood Fire in Guldegargard, Denmark. Sinha designed and built a kiln for her studio in Pondicherry, Earth Art. She received a STEM scholarship to attend Utah State University in Logan, Utah for a second MFA. Currently, Sinha is an instructor of art and gallery coordinator at Utah State University. This work is inspired by geometry in nature and man-made objects. Platonic solids that make up most of the other forms in the universe is the inherent driving force behind this series. With this idea, she rendered this form in CAD and used CNC milling to carve the positive form in insulation foam, then used the foam form to make a mold for slip casting in porcelain. Beyond the form, she seeks the subtle nuances of directional light and therefore shadows, which the monochromatic sculpture intensifies. Jacqueline Say. After earning her BFA in studio art from NYU, Jacqueline spent more than 15 years designing fashion jewelry for a variety of North American brands. Turned off by fast fashion, corporate greed, and the culture of excess consumerism, she returned to her passion of sculpting as a form of self-therapy. Jacqueline's work is influenced by the anxieties and dilemmas of contemporary life. It is an exploration of her fascination with American society of excess and consumerism, social media overstimulation, and gluttony as remedies for emotional disconnection, meanwhile still celebrating the beauty and flaws of these fragile human conditions. In this series of work, Death by Sugar, she uses a variety of sculpting techniques to create porcelain confections with an irresistibly perturbing charm, resulting in a surreal dimension beyond dreams where sugar and fetus skulls are remixed into a bittersweet pop narrative. White represents death in Chinese culture, and this series of work is about the peace she has made towards her sugar addiction. The bare bone-like surfaces are meant to be evocative and peaceful at the same time. She chooses not to glaze her work because color is visually addictive. She wants to pull away from that distraction so the viewer can be present and focus on details and form. These works are fueled by her love-hate relationship with sugar and part memento mori. It is an ode to her obsessive and indulgent nature, childhood nostalgia, love of pastry arts, frustration, and ultimately acceptance with her sugar addiction. Ife Williams was born and raised in the South, formerly trained in sculpture at Interlochen Arts Academy and the University of Michigan, before pursuing an MA in Museum Studies at Syracuse University. Over the last 3 decades, she has been creating in stone and clay. Williams currently lives and works in Metro Atlanta. Williams's current body of work, Clay Sketches, presents a continued exploration of minimalist forms derived from the abstracted human figure, an understanding that a sculptural object must be viewable from all vantage points, and a love of language. These forms focus on the movements and lines of individual dancers within an imagined choreography. In each, she seeks to capture an energy and form that may occur as a dancer moves across the stage, emoting the feeling of a dance frozen in time. She has coupled these gestures with the texture created of text sprawled across their surfaces, building upon the strength of words, the alienating properties of unknown languages, and how often the same word in the same language holds a personally unique meaning for each person who utters it. The coded alphabet she has created cascades across the surface of these simple forms to display seemingly unintelligible messages in a common language. In truth, the message is written in English. The simple line of a thrown object, marred by calculated disruptions and unrecognizable words, emulates a dancer's desire to possess a perfect form and effectively convey the choreographer's intent. Linda Zhang is a licensed architect, artist, and educator based in Toronto. She is an assistant professor at Ryerson University School of Interior Design and a principal at Studio Pararam. She is a recipient of the 2019 Multicultural Fellowship at NCECA, the 2020 Artist in Residence at the European Ceramic Work Center, and the 2017 through 2018 Bogosian Fellow at Syracuse University School of Architecture, as well as a 2017 Fellow at the Berlin Center for Art and Urbanistics. Her research areas include memory, cultural heritage, identity politics, material processes, namely casting and ceramics, and digital reproduction technologies. The Erie Canal as a site of untold stories. Water. It's all about water. What's interesting about water is that it has no form, and it also has the power to deform. Water dissolves as much as it moves, fills, and gives life. Such indeterminacy offers the space for a meditation on how life and lives are formed, reformed, and even deformed over time. The waters of the Erie Canal moved goods, people, and therefore moved lives. But as we know, the water didn't move people in the same way at all times. Indigenous people, poor people, and even privileged people all felt the force of water in different and disparate ways, as the water formed, reformed, and deformed lives through work, trade, and displacement. To think with the force of water, with the Erie Canal, is an invitation to tell the story about the cost of progress in central New York. Although it's about the water, it's also about the lives shaped by the movement of the waters. Through these cast clay vessels, she explores the marginalized histories that made the canal possible. Formed from 3D scans of the canal locks, these vessels act as recording devices for the movement and force of the Erie Canal waters, forming and deforming the vessels. Their final forms express the de- and reformation inherent in the construction, maintenance, and usage of the canal, symbolic of the losses that inevitably occurred alongside the progressive ingenuity and creativity that the canal symbolized, and in some cases still does symbolize.